Kenji, why did we decide to do an episode devoted to popcorn?
Because popcorn is the world's greatest snack.
I
It's God's gift to snacking.
I fully agree. It is
It
my
is also the
favorite
reason
snack.
why melted butter was invented.
Maybe, perhaps. I know. I'm definitely. Is melted butter your favorite topping?
So, I'm a big fan of movie theater popcorn, to be honest, which is not actually made with melted butter. I think back in the
What?
day, it probably did used to be made
What?
with melted butter. There's no butter in movie theater popcorn.
What? I'm shocked. I thought that was so natural.
Should we get into this now, or do you want to talk a little bit more about the history of popcorn first?
Let's talk a little bit about popcorn because I did not know. I mean, I guess it shouldn't be surprising how old popcorn is, but in my perusal of Wikipedia before we began. We know that corn was domesticated 10,000 years ago, but I thought it was interesting that there was evidence of popcorn, like actually popped corn in Peru from over 1,000 years ago.
In Peru.
And then there's more definitive evidence of popcorn from New Mexico, which was ancestral Pueblan, which I'm probably saying wrong, so let's not use that clip. 3600 from 3600 BC. Anyway, popcorn is very old. It's a lot older than I thought it was.
Well, it's a pretty natural product, right? Because all you're doing is taking corn that has naturally dried and then heating it, right? And that's all you have to do, and then it pops.
It must have been discovered accidentally. You know how like all the
It's like
great
someone
food
left
dishes?
someone left it out in the sun or something. And it got a little bit too
Exactly.
hot.
But you know how
Forgot
like
it
all
on a
the
volcanic rock.
great food recipes are usually like, somebody accidentally made something and it turned into this like world famous recipe, and it always sounds really bogus, but I could completely imagine having some dried corn lying around and being like, what just happened, man? Like, what's good? Oh no.
They happen to have some. They happen to have some dried. Happen to have some dried corn, some very fine salt, and some melted butter lying around.
Maybe. But it got much bigger when we had a popcorn maker invented in the 1890s. It was this guy named Charles Creeder, and he was a candy store owner, and he created a number of steam-powered machines for roasting nuts, and he applied the technology to corn kernels, and that was the first popcorn maker.
What did these early popcorn makers look like, Deb?
Do you want me to pull up an image?
No, we can forget I asked that question.
Would you like me to search for you on the internet and show you a picture? That's what I'm sorry. I say that to my kids all the time when they ask me a question. I don't know the answer. I'm like, I can Google it.
I am a little bit curious because popcorn is not a particularly complicated thing, right? The way it works is you have dried corn. There's a teeny bit of moisture left inside it, and it ends up with this kind of hard plastic-like shell outside because the starch and everything just kind of hardens as it dries. And then what happens is when you heat it, that little bit of air inside, of moisture inside, turns to steam, and then it builds up a lot of pressure, and then finally, when the outer shell cracks, it puffs open, all the starch sets in place, and you end up with popcorn. And you can do, it's the same way that you would get things like puffed rice, or puffed,
Exactly.
all those breakfast cereals that are puffed. They're all made with essentially the same process.
Yeah, there's like popped quinoa, amaranth I've had. Buckwheat is really cool. Plus, let's not forget corn nuts, which I literally cannot say those two words without like quoting Heather's. Corn nuts. You remember that
Well,
part?
corn nuts are not popcorn, though. Are you saying
No,
corn nuts
but
are
it
popcorn?
is. It said I thought it was a popped corn kernel, but not popcorn somehow.
No, corn nuts are made with a different style of corn. So they're made with like the large kerneled starchy corn that you would find in South America. So you would find that in Peru, you would find that in Colombia. Those really starchy large corn kernels, and they're just roasted or fried, but they're not popped.
Oh, I thought they were popped.
They are delicious.
Well, I am removing corn nuts from the lineup of.
I would say corn nuts are adjacent.
Great.
Do you remember like 10 years ago there was also a product called like Half Pops, I think, that was specifically popcorn for people who like those little half popped kernels at the bottom?
Really? Do you like those half pop kernels at the bottom
I
of
do.
popcorn?
I don't like the fully unpopped kernels, but I love the half popped kernels, the ones that are really crunchy. And sometimes I like, because what happens when you're popping corn in a pan or in a wok or whatever is that the smaller bits, as you're shaking the pan, the smaller bits all fall to the bottom, right? And so those little bits, the little bits, like the little half-popped ones, are denser and heavier and smaller, so they fall to the bottom. So they spend a lot of time on the bottom of the pan, and they actually end up getting like a little bit of a toasty flavor, I find. So I do like having sort of like the lighter, sort of cleaner taste of the popcorn on top, and then when you get to the bottom of the bowl, you get these little toasty, crunchy bits.
They've also collected the maximum amount of butter and salt, so they're extra fun to eat. But I feel like it ranges from brands because there's some local popcorn I buy that the half half pop ones are delicious, and then sometimes from the bigger brand, the half pop ones just kind of taste like unpleasantly shell-like. But you know, there's a lot of different brands. There's a lot of different varieties of popcorn. All right.
Speaking of brands, before we get into sort of actual popcorn popping techniques, do you want to talk about some of our favorite popcorn snacks, like existing ones that you can just go out and buy?
Oh, how my list of popcorn loves is long. I wrote a poem about them. No, I'm just kidding. I was thinking, like, Cracker Jack has to be the most classic one, right? Didn't you like get those at a ball game and they had those weird little games in them, or like prizes?
They're certainly the most sung about one. Yeah, Cracker Jack. Yeah, and really crappy prizes too. Yeah, prizes that I think have gotten progressively worse over the years. Because now they're just like little. You know, I got a box of Cracker Jack at a baseball game for Alicia like a couple months ago, and inside was just like it was like a little piece of paper with a drawing on it. It was nothing really.
Were they ever better though? I'm not sure.
I feel like at some point they had like decoder rings and like I remember having one of those things that had like those red and blue tinted plastic screens so that you could look at secret messages and stuff.
Yes,
I think they used to be better.
I remember that. Mm-hmm. Are we showing our age here? Probably. All right, you've got kettle corn, which I've actually never been that into because it's just too sugary. And then you've got those. Did you ever get this? There was always some girl in my summer camp bunk every summer whose parents would send her one of those giant tins. I don't know if it's Garrett, Indiana brand, or there's a lot of brands that do it, but it's these giant tins of popcorn with like a 3-part divider. And I think one is caramel, one is like some sort of cheddar popcorn. It's like orange, and the other one is maybe like a classic butter salt.
And they're like absurdly expensive, right? You pay like,
I don't know. I wasn't buying them as a kid. I was eating them. I didn't know what money was.
There's a place like that in Seattle. There's a place like that in Seattle down in Pike Place, on the lower part of Pike Place that sells popcorn. And I think it's like $18 for like a 6-ounce bag or whatever it is. Some really crazy price. But you look at those popcorn kernels. So first of all, those are all made with mushroom popcorn.
Mushroom popcorn.
As opposed to snowflake popcorn.
I actually meant to pick some of that up before this episode because it's such beautiful popcorn. It's that perfectly round stuff.
Right. Well, that's the popcorn that's made specifically. That popcorn, they choose it for caramel corn and for kettle corn because it doesn't have the same sort of surface area that snowflake popcorn has. Like, so snowflake popcorn, it has a lot of surface area, and those are the ones that you get at the movie theater. And those are designed to be like really crunchy. Or bred to be really crunchy.
And they lock into each other so you can pick up more than one piece at a time.
Exactly. Whereas mushroom popcorn has a lower, like it's basically a sphere, so it has the lowest possible surface area to volume ratio, and that's so that they don't get soggy or you don't get like big chunks of like caramel or whatever caught in the cracks. That's why they choose that.
We should clarify that there's no mushrooms in mushroom.
No,
but people get very upset when you talk about there being mushrooms and things that should not have mushrooms. There's no mushroom. It's just about the shape. But I have to say, as an eating popcorn, if you were just to put butter on it, I've bought it before. It looks so cool in a bowl, but it's not the most interesting tasting popcorn.
No, it's not.
Just it doesn't have a lot of crunch.
Exactly. Yeah, mushroom popcorn, it needs that kind of like candy shell or whatever. It needs like some kind of flavor coating. Mm-hmm. To add that texture or to really sort of boost up its flavor, because otherwise it doesn't pick up as much as the snowflake style does.
So when your kids beg you for the flavored popcorn at the Pike Place Market, are you like, we have popcorn at home?
They do not. My kids they're well trained. They have good taste, and they like their popcorn with Flavacol and coconut oil, the way any red-blooded American should.
Your children are so elevated, Kenji. Maybe we can do a parenting podcast.
They're big fans of diacetyl butyric acid and coconut oil.